The Star Cruiser Dominion's pride cut through the void between systems, its massive hull gleaming under the distant light of foreign suns. Commander Zethkar stood on the bridge, his forearms crossed behind his back as he watched the swirling patterns of hyperspace through the main viewport. The hegemony's most decorated officer had seen countless worlds fall before their might, but something about this mission felt different. "Sir, we're receiving the final intelligence reports from the advanced scouts," reported Lieutenant Vex Nye, her tentacles dancing across the control interface with practiced precision. "The human colony of New Haven has been acquired successfully." Zethkar's compound eyes shifted toward his communications officer. The word acquired carried weight in the hegemony military. It meant another species had been brought under their control, their resources claimed, their people processed according to hegemony protocols. It was standard procedure, nothing that should concern a veteran commander. "Casualties?" he asked, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had overseen dozens of such operations. "Minimal resistance," Vex Nye replied, consulting her datapad. "The adult humans put up some fight, but nothing our forces couldn't handle. Standard pacification protocols were mostly effective." The slight hesitation in her voice made Zethkar turn fully toward her. "Mostly?" "Well, sir, there was an incident with some of the younger humans. The children. They were separated from their parents during the initial assault. Our forces had to relocate them to secure facilities for their own safety." Zethkar nodded absently. Child separation was unfortunate but necessary during conquest operations. Young beings were vulnerable, and the chaos of invasion often required protective custody until proper placement could be arranged. He had seen it countless times before with other species. "How many?" "Approximately 2,000 juveniles, ages ranging from what humans call infants to teenagers. They've been transported to Processing Station Gamma 7 for evaluation and integration into hegemony youth development programs." The commander felt a familiar weight settle in his chest. 2,000 children torn from their families. It was the price of expansion, the cost of bringing order to chaotic systems. The hegemony's methods were efficient, if not always pleasant. "Any word from the human government? Surrender negotiations?" "That's complicated, sir." Vex Nye's tentacles coiled nervously around her control station. "The humans have been broadcasting on all frequencies. They're demanding the return of their children. They claim they'll consider surrender negotiations only after what they call unconditional release of all minors." Zethkar's primary arms gestured dismissively. "Standard emotional response. They'll come to understand that their offspring will receive superior education and opportunities within hegemony systems. Many species initially resist our youth integration programs. Sir, with respect, the humans seem different. Their emotional responses are more intense than we've encountered before. Some of our xenopsychologists are reporting unusual readings from the adult prisoners." "Define unusual." Vex Nye consulted her notes, her voice taking on a more clinical tone. "Elevated stress hormones beyond normal parameters. Aggressive behavior that doesn't diminish even under sedation. Several humans have died in custody from what medical reports as emotional shock related to separation from their offspring. Dr. Krelvin describes it as an unprecedented biological response to juvenile separation." Something cold shifted in Zethkar's chest. In all his years of service, he had rarely encountered a species where parents died simply from being separated from their children. Most civilized races understood that offspring were safer in proper institutional care during transitions. "Perhaps their emotional regulation is simply more primitive," he suggested, though his voice lacked conviction. "Have our cultural analysts provided any insights?" "Actually, sir, that's where things become more concerning. Analyst Prime Jextor submitted a report this morning. She says human family bonds appear to operate on levels we don't fully understand. According to her preliminary findings, human children aren't just emotional attachments for the adults, they seem to be fundamental to human psychological stability." The bridge fell silent except for the low hum of the ship's engines. Zethkar had conquered 17 different species during his career. He understood that some civilizations had stronger family structures than others, but this suggested something beyond normal parental concern. "Show me the cultural analysis files," he ordered. The main screen shifted to display a series of human images and data streams. Jextor's research painted a picture that made Zethkar increasingly uncomfortable. Human reproduction was apparently a complex, time-intensive process. Their young remained dependent for an unprecedented number of years. Most disturbing of all, human adults seemed to form biochemical bonds with their offspring that went far beyond anything the hegemony had encountered. Sir, Vexnai interrupted his reading. We're receiving another transmission from the human leadership. Should I route it to your private chambers? No, play it here. The screen shifted to show a human female, her face streaked with tears but her eyes blazing with something that made Zethkar's combat-trained instincts twitch. Behind her stood dozens of other humans, all displaying similar expressions of barely controlled rage mixed with desperation. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Colonial Defense Force, the human said, her voice steady despite her obvious emotional distress. We know you can understand us. We know you're listening. You have taken our children. Our babies. Some of them are not even a year old. She stepped closer to the camera, and Zethkar found himself instinctively stepping back from the screen. I don't know what kind of civilization you represent, but I want to make something very clear. We will negotiate for anything, territory, resources, even our own freedom. But our children are not negotiable. They belong with their families. The transmission showed more humans gathering behind their speaker, and Zethkar noticed something unsettling. These weren't broken, defeated people. Despite being conquered, despite facing a technologically superior force, they showed none of the resignation he expected from a defeated population. You have 72 hours to begin returning our children, Admiral Chen continued. After that, we will consider your actions an act of war against our most fundamental values. And, I promise you, there is nothing more dangerous in this universe than humans fighting for their children. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Sir? Vexnai ventured. Orders? Zethkar stared at the blank screen. Something about the human female's final words had triggered his survival instincts, honed by decades of military service. There had been something in her voice that transcended simple grief or anger. It had sounded like a promise. Contact Processing Station Gamma 7, he ordered. I want a full security assessment of our facilities there. And, get me everything our intelligence division has on human military capabilities. Sir, the humans were easily defeated in the initial assault. Their technology is centuries behind ours. I'm not worried about their technology, Lieutenant. Zethkar moved to his command chair, his mind working through tactical scenarios. I'm worried about their motivation. As the ship continued its journey toward the processing station, Zethkar found himself reviewing the cultural analysis again and again. One line in particular caught his attention: human protective instincts toward offspring appear to override normal self-preservation responses and logical decision-making processes. For the first time in his military career, Commander Zethkar began to wonder if the hegemony had made a terrible mistake. Not a tactical error or a diplomatic miscalculation, but something far worse: they had underestimated an enemy's capacity for love. The next few days would teach him just how dangerous that mistake could be. As reports filtered in from New Haven, a disturbing pattern emerged. Human prisoners weren't behaving like typical conquered populations. They weren't adapting to captivity or beginning the psychological adjustment process that usually followed successful invasions. Instead, they seemed to be organizing. Sir, Vexnai reported during the next shift, intelligence reports that human prisoners have been attempting to establish communication networks within the detention facilities. They're trying to gather information about where their children have been taken. Zethkar felt his unease growing. Security response? Standard isolation protocols have been implemented, but the humans seem to be using some kind of coded communication system we haven't deciphered yet. They're tapping on walls, using hand signals, even modulating their breathing patterns to pass messages. The commander's forearms tensed. Bring me Dr. Krelvin's latest medical reports. When the files appeared on his screen, Zethkar's concerns deepened. The hegemony's chief xenobiologist painted a disturbing picture of human physiology under extreme stress. Unlike other species they had encountered, humans seemed to be entering some kind of altered state when separated from their offspring. Subjects continue to demonstrate abnormal stress responses, Dr. Krelvin had written. Traditional sedation methods are less effective than predicted. Several subjects have demonstrated unexpected physical capabilities when presented with false information about their offspring's welfare. Recommend enhanced security protocols. Zethkar scrolled through incident reports. A human female had somehow bent reinforced containment bars with her bare hands when guards suggested her child might be harmed. A human male had fought through 3 levels of neural dampening fields to reach a communication terminal. Most unsettling of all, the humans seemed to be getting stronger, not weaker, the longer they were separated from their children. "Sir," Communications Officer Youthlex interrupted. "We're receiving priority transmissions from multiple hegemony installations. Something about disturbances in human-occupied territories." "What kind of disturbances?" "Reports are still coming in, but it appears that humans throughout hegemony space are beginning to react to news of the New Haven operation." Zethkar's blood ran cold. "How many humans are currently under hegemony control?" "Approximately 47 million across 12 systems, sir. Most are in various stages of integration into our civilian workforce." "And they know about New Haven?" "Information travels quickly through human communication networks, sir. They have an unprecedented ability to share data across vast distances using their internet systems, even under our monitoring protocols." The bridge's emergency alert system suddenly activated, bathing everything in pulsing red light. Zethkar had heard that alarm countless times during combat operations, but never while traveling through supposedly secure hegemony space. "Report." "Sir, we're receiving distress calls from Processing Station Gamma 7, Vexnai announced, her voice tight with disbelief. "They're reporting a massive security breach. Multiple human civilian vessels are approaching their position at high speed." "Civilian vessels? How did they get past our perimeter defenses?" "Unknown, sir. But Station Command reports that the approaching ships are broadcasting on all frequencies. The message is simple: we're coming for our children." Zethkar stared at the tactical display as dozens of red dots appeared on the screen, all converging on the processing station's coordinates. These weren't military vessels, they were cargo haulers, passenger transports, even private shuttles. Ships that should have been easy targets for the station's defensive systems. "Sir," Youthlex reported, his voice trembling slightly, "the station commander is requesting immediate reinforcement. He says the approaching humans are not responding to warning shots." "What do you mean, not responding?" "They're not retreating, sir. Their ships are taking damage, but they're not stopping. Some of them are continuing their approach even after catastrophic hull breaches." For the first time in his military career, Commander Zethkar felt a chill of genuine fear. He had faced countless enemies, survived battles against overwhelming odds, and earned his reputation through courage under fire. But this was something entirely outside his experience. These humans were flying damaged ships through a war zone to reach their children. They were willing to die for them. "Set course for Processing Station Gamma 7, he ordered. "Maximum speed." "Sir, our estimated arrival time is 18 hours. Zethkar looked at the tactical display again, watching the steady advance of the human civilian fleet. "I hope that's fast enough." As the Dominion's pride accelerated toward what was beginning to look like a battlefield, Zethkar found himself wondering if the hegemony had just made the worst tactical error in their 1,000-year history. They had taken human children. And the universe was about to learn what that really meant. The journey to Processing Station Gamma 7 became a nightmare of escalating reports and impossible readings. Every hour brought new intelligence that challenged everything Commander Zethkar thought he knew about warfare, psychology, and the nature of civilized behavior. "Sir, incoming priority transmission from Hegemony High Command," Lieutenant Vexnai announced, her tentacles trembling as she worked her console. The massive holographic display at the center of the bridge flickered to life, revealing the stern visage of Supreme Admiral Korthak. The highest-ranking military officer in the hegemony looked haggard, his normally pristine uniform wrinkled and stained with what appeared to be stress-induced perspiration. Commander Zethkar, the Supreme Admiral began without preamble, I need a full tactical assessment of the human situation. High Command is receiving reports from across our territories that frankly sound impossible. Zethkar straightened in his command chair. Sir, I've been monitoring the situation since we received news of the New Haven operation. The human response is unprecedented in our military experience. Elaborate. The civilian fleet approaching Processing Station Gamma 7 now numbers over 300 vessels, sir. They've somehow coordinated across multiple star systems without using any communication methods we can detect. More disturbing, they're displaying tactical coordination that rivals our own military formations. Supreme Admiral Korthak's expression darkened. These are civilian ships, Commander. Cargo haulers and passenger transports. How is tactical coordination possible? Unknown, sir. But our xenopsychology department has a theory. Dr. Jextor believes humans may possess some kind of collective behavioral response when their offspring are threatened. She's comparing it to swarm intelligence phenomena observed in certain insect species, but operating on a galactic scale. The transmission crackled with interference as another voice joined the conversation. Dr. Krelvin, the hegemony's chief xenobiologist, appeared in a smaller window within the display. Commanders, I need to share critical findings from my research into human biology, Dr. Krelvin said, his voice carrying an edge of scientific excitement mixed with genuine concern. What we're witnessing isn't just emotional response, it's a fundamental biological imperative. Explain, Supreme Admiral Korthak ordered. Human evolution occurred on a planet with extreme predation pressures. Unlike most civilized species, humans developed in an environment where protecting offspring required not just individual effort, but coordinated group responses to existential threats. Their brains are literally wired to enter an altered state when their children are in danger. Dr. Krelvin activated a series of brain scans that appeared on the display. These are neural activity patterns from human prisoners over the past 72 hours. Notice the unusual activity in regions associated with pain tolerance, strategic thinking, and what they call adrenaline response. They're not just angry, they're operating in a biological state we've never encountered before. Commander Zethkar felt his stomach clench as he studied the readings. The brain patterns look like those of military-grade combat stimulants, except these humans were producing the chemicals naturally. Sir, Communications Officer Youth Lex interrupted. We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. It's different from their previous communications. Show us. The display shifted to reveal Admiral Sarah Chen again, but the change in her appearance made Zethkar's combat instincts surge to full alert. Her face had lost all traces of diplomatic civility. Her eyes held the cold calculation of a predator, and, behind her, hundreds of other humans displayed similar expressions. Hegemony forces, Admiral Chen began, her voice carrying none of the emotional distress from her previous transmission. My name is Sarah Chen, and I speak for the human species. You have 72 hours to begin releasing our children. This is not a negotiation. This is not a request. This is a statement of fact. She stepped closer to the camera, and Zethkar found himself gripping his command chair. We know where Processing Station Gamma 7 is located. We know its defensive capabilities. We know how many of you are stationed there. What you apparently don't know is what humans become when you threaten our families. The view behind Admiral Chen shifted to show the interior of what was obviously a civilian cargo ship that had been rapidly converted into a military vessel. Humans of all ages worked with focused intensity, welding armor plating, installing weapon systems that looked improvised but deadly, and coordinating activities with the kind of efficiency that took hegemony forces years to develop. Commander, Dr. Krelvin whispered through the transmission, look at their coordination. No verbal communication, no obvious command structure, but perfect synchronization. It's like watching a single organism with multiple bodies. Admiral Chen continued her address. Every human in hegemony territory now knows what you've done. Every human ship, every human worker, every human in every facility you control is now operating with a single purpose. We want our children back. The transmission shifted to show scenes from across hegemony space that made Zethkar's blood run cold. Human workers in manufacturing facilities had somehow converted their production lines to create weapons. Human technical specialists in communication centers had apparently gained access to classified military frequencies. Most disturbing of all, human civilians had begun coordinating escape attempts with success rates that defied statistical analysis. How are they doing this? Supreme Admiral Korthak demanded. Our security protocols should prevent this level of coordination. Dr. Jextor's voice joined the conversation from her research station. Sir, I've been studying human cultural patterns. They have an evolutionary trait they call pack behavior that activates under extreme threat conditions. When human children are endangered, every adult human apparently becomes part of an extended family group. They stop thinking as individuals and start operating as a collective. The implications hit Zethkar like a physical blow. You're saying 47 million humans across 12 star systems are now functioning as a single military unit? That appears to be exactly what's happening, Commander. Admiral Chen's transmission continued, and now the view showed the approaching human fleet in all its terrifying glory. Hundreds of ships flying in perfect formation, their hulls scarred from hasty modifications, their crews visible through viewports working with mechanical precision. We will reach Processing Station Gamma 7 in 14 hours, Admiral Chen announced. Your defensive systems cannot stop all of us. Your weapons cannot kill all of us. And, even if they could, every human death will only make the rest of us more determined. She paused, and, when she spoke again, her voice carried a finality that made Zethkar's survival instincts scream warnings. You have made a fundamental error in understanding our species. You assumed that because we appeared peaceful, we were harmless. You assumed that because we seemed technologically inferior, we were defenseless. But, most importantly, you assumed that our love for our children made us weak. The transmission showed close-ups of human faces throughout the fleet. Men, women, elderly, young adults, all wearing expressions of absolute determination. Our love for our children doesn't make us weak. It makes us unstoppable. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Commander Zethkar, Supreme Admiral Korthak said finally, I'm authorizing emergency protocols. Whatever resources you need to resolve this situation, you have them. But, I need this contained before it spreads further. Sir, with respect, I'm not sure containment is possible anymore. If Dr. Jextor's analysis is correct, we're not facing a rebellion, we're facing a species-wide defensive response. Reports began flooding in from across hegemony space, each more alarming than the last. Human workers in critical infrastructure facilities had begun coordinated slowdowns. Human technical specialists were introducing subtle sabotage into military systems. Most concerningly, humans in sensitive positions were displaying unprecedented knowledge of classified operations. Sir, Lieutenant Vexnai reported, intelligence reports that humans somehow acquired detailed specifications of Processing Station Gamma 7's defense systems. The approaching fleet is modifying their ships to exploit specific vulnerabilities. How is that possible? Those specifications are classified at the highest levels. Dr. Krelvin's voice crackled through the communication system. Commander, I think they're sharing information through channels we don't understand. Human neurology includes structures for rapid information transfer during crisis situations. It's possible they're communicating through methods our sensors can't detect. The tactical display updated to show Processing Station Gamma 7's defensive perimeter. Automated weapon platforms, energy shields, and patrol vessels that should have been more than adequate to handle a civilian fleet. But, as Zethkar watched the human formations approach, he began to understand why his instincts were screaming danger. The humans weren't approaching like civilians in stolen ships. They were moving with the precision of a military force that had been planning this operation for years rather than days. Their formations suggested knowledge not just of the station's defenses, but of optimal attack vectors, firing solutions, and tactical coordination that should have been impossible for hastily assembled civilians. Sir, Communications Officer Youthlex announced, Processing Station Gamma 7 is reporting direct communication from the human fleet. They're requesting permission to broadcast the message fleet-wide. Denied. I don't want to hear more threats. Sir, it's not a threat. They're asking to speak directly with their children. The words hit the bridge like a physical force. Zethkar felt something twist in his chest as he realized the implications. They want to talk to the children? Yes, sir. They're saying the children must be terrified and confused. They want to let them know their families are coming for them. For the first time since receiving his commission, Commander Zethkar found himself questioning the fundamental principles of hegemony expansion. They had taken children from their families and locked them in institutional facilities. They had assumed this was the compassionate approach, the civilized way to handle displaced youth during conquest operations. But, as he watched the approaching human fleet, each ship loaded with parents willing to die for the chance to reach their children, he began to understand that the hegemony had made an error of cosmic proportions. Sir, Dr. Jextor's voice interrupted his thoughts. I need to share something critical about human family structures. Our assumption that children are safer in institutional care appears to be fundamentally flawed when applied to this species. Explain. Human children aren't just smaller adults who need education and resources. They're neurologically incomplete. They literally require contact with their family units to develop properly. Separating them from their parents doesn't just cause emotional distress, it causes actual biological trauma. The full horror of the situation began to dawn on Zethkar. Are you saying the children are being harmed by our standard care protocols? Commander, I think we may have accidentally committed an act of biological warfare against human children. Their stress responses are off any scale our medical equipment was designed to measure. The tactical display chimed with an urgent update. The human fleet had reached the outer defensive perimeter of Processing Station Gamma 7. Sir, Lieutenant Vexnai reported, Station Command reports that the human ships are not responding to defensive fire. They're continuing their approach despite taking heavy damage. Zethkar watched in fascination and horror as civilian cargo ships continued advancing through weapons fire that should have destroyed them instantly. Some were venting atmosphere, others showed massive hull breaches, but they maintained formation and continued toward the station. Sir, the station commander is requesting immediate guidance. The humans they're using damaged ships as shields for intact vessels. They're sacrificing some of their fleet to protect the others. How many ships have been destroyed? 37 confirmed destroyed, sir. But, the remaining vessels have reached the station's inner defensive perimeter. They're beginning docking procedures. Commander Zethkar realized he was witnessing something unprecedented in military history. These humans weren't just willing to die for their children, they were strategically sacrificing themselves to ensure others could reach them. Sir, Communications Officer Youthlex announced, the human fleet is broadcasting again. This time they're trying to reach the children directly. Show me. The display filled with the image of Admiral Chen standing in what appeared to be the cargo bay of a severely damaged ship. Behind her, dozens of humans worked to seal hull breaches while others prepared what looked like boarding equipment. Children of New Haven, Admiral Chen said, her voice gentle despite the chaos around her, this is Admiral Chen. We know you're scared. We know you don't understand what's happening. But, I need you to know that every mom and dad, every brother and sister, every aunt and uncle and grandparent is coming for you. The transmission showed views from other ships in the fleet, revealing similar scenes of controlled chaos as humans prepared for what was obviously a direct assault on the station. We're almost there, kids. Just hold on a little bit longer. Your families love you, and we're never going to stop fighting to bring you home. The transmission ended, and Zethkar found himself staring at a tactical situation unlike anything in hegemony military doctrine. They were about to witness humans attempting to board a heavily fortified military installation armed with nothing but improvised weapons and absolute determination. Sir, Lieutenant Vexnai reported quietly, estimated time until the human fleet reaches docking range is 12 minutes. Commander Zethkar looked around his bridge at officers who had served with distinction in dozens of campaigns. Their expressions reflected the same confusion and growing dread that he felt. They were about to learn what happened when humans fought for their children. And he was beginning to suspect that no amount of military superiority would be enough to stop them. The first human ship to reach Processing Station Gamma 7's docking bay was a converted cargo hauler called Sarah's Hope. Commander Zethkar watched through security feeds as the battered vessel, its hull scarred by defensive fire and venting atmosphere from a dozen breaches, somehow managed to complete a docking procedure that should have been impossible given its damage. "Sir," Lieutenant Vex Nye reported, her voice tight with disbelief, "the humans are exiting their ships. Station security is reporting that they're not armed with military-grade weapons." Zethkar leaned forward in his command chair. "What are they carrying?" "Hand tools, sir. Construction equipment, improvised shields, and..." She paused, consulting her readouts. "Medical supplies. Large quantities of medical supplies and what appear to be comfort items." "Comfort items?" "Toys, sir. Blankets. Food packages labeled for children. They appear to be carrying supplies to care for their offspring rather than weapons to fight our forces." The security feeds showed humans pouring out of damaged ships with a determination that defied rational explanation. These weren't soldiers, they were parents, grandparents, siblings, and family friends. Some limped from injuries sustained during their approach to the station. Others showed signs of radiation exposure from damaged ship systems. But they moved with unified purpose toward the station's interior. "Station Commander Veltar is requesting immediate reinforcement," Communications Officer Youthlex reported. "He says the humans are advancing despite defensive fire. They're using improvised shields and coordinated movement patterns, but they're not returning fire." "They're not shooting back?" "No, sir. They appear to be focused entirely on reaching the areas where the human children are being held." Dr. Krelvin's voice crackled through the communication system from his research station aboard the Dominion's Pride. "Commander, this behavior pattern confirms my earlier analysis. Humans in this biological state prioritize offspring protection over all other considerations, including personal safety and tactical advantage." The implications struck Zethkar like a physical blow. These humans weren't trying to win a military engagement, they were trying to rescue their children. The distinction explained their seemingly suicidal tactics and their refusal to be deterred by defensive fire. "Sir," Lieutenant Vex Nye announced, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Processing Station Gamma 7's medical bay. Dr. Thexran is reporting unusual readings from the human children." "What kind of readings?" "The children's stress levels are decreasing significantly, sir. Heart rates dropping, brain activity normalizing, biochemical markers indicating reduced anxiety. Dr. Thexran says it began approximately 30 minutes ago." Zethkar felt a chill run down his spine. 30 minutes ago was when the human fleet arrived at the station. Dr. Krelvin's voice joined the conversation. "Commander, this suggests the human children can somehow detect the presence of their rescue party. Their biology is responding to proximity to family members even before direct contact." The security feeds showed the first group of humans reaching the children's quarters. What Zethkar witnessed next would be burned into his memory for the rest of his life. The heavily reinforced doors that separated the children from their would-be rescuers should have taken hours to breach with the improvised tools the humans carried. Instead, parents worked with mechanical precision, some using cutting tools while others provided covering shields, others treated injuries, all coordinated as if they had trained for this specific operation for years. When the first door fell, the sound that emerged from the speakers made every being on the bridge of the Dominion's Pride step back instinctively. 2,000 human children, ranging from infants to teenagers, began calling out in recognition. The cacophony should have been chaos, but somehow it resolved into a harmony of reunion that transcended species barriers. "Sir," Dr. Thexran's voice came through the communication system, "medical readings from the children are extraordinary. Their stress hormones are dropping to normal levels within moments of contact with their family members. Neurological activity is normalizing at rates that shouldn't be medically possible." The security feeds showed scenes that challenged everything the hegemony understood about efficient population management. Human children who had been listless and unresponsive during their time in institutional care suddenly became animated and alert when their parents appeared. Older children immediately began helping younger ones, while adults moved through the groups with practiced efficiency, providing medical attention, comfort, and organization. "Commander, Dr. Jextor's voice added from a research station, "I'm observing behavioral patterns that suggest human family units operate as integrated biological systems. The children aren't just emotionally dependent on their parents, they're biologically incomplete without them. Station Commander Veltar's voice crackled through the communication system, tight with panic. Command, the humans have reached the primary holding areas. They're not just retrieving their own children, they're organizing evacuation procedures for all the human juveniles. They somehow know which children belong to which families. Zethkar watched in fascination as humans moved through the station with impossible coordination. Parents found their specific children without apparent communication or searching. Siblings located each other across vast holding areas. Even extended family members seemed to navigate directly to their relatives. How are they doing this? He asked. Dr. Krelvin's response carried a note of scientific wonder. Commander, I believe we're witnessing genetic recognition phenomena operating at levels we've never encountered. Humans may be capable of identifying family members through sensory channels we don't understand, possibly chemical, possibly electromagnetic, possibly something else entirely. The tactical display chimed with an urgent update. More human ships were arriving at Processing Station Gamma 7, but these weren't the damaged vessels from the original rescue fleet. These were pristine ships, moving in perfect formation, with energy signatures that made Zethkar's tactical instincts surge to full alert. Sir, Lieutenant Vexnai reported, sensors are detecting massive fleet movements throughout human-occupied territories. Ships are converging on this location from 12 star systems. Military vessels? Unknown, sir. The energy signatures don't match any known human military configurations, but the formation patterns suggest advanced tactical coordination. Supreme Admiral Korthak's image appeared on the main display, his expression grim. Commander Zethkar, High Command has been monitoring the situation. We need immediate resolution before this escalates further. Sir, the humans have successfully reached their children. Station security has been unable to prevent the reunion. Current assessment suggests the humans will attempt to evacuate the juveniles and depart. That is not acceptable. The children were legitimately acquired during a conquest operation. Allowing their return sets a precedent that undermines hegemony authority. Dr. Krelvin's voice interrupted the military discussion. Supreme Admiral, I need to share critical medical findings. The human children were suffering from biological trauma during their separation from family units. Continuing to hold them may constitute a violation of standard treatment protocols for sentient beings. Explain. Sir, human children require contact with their family units to maintain basic neurological function. Separating them from their parents doesn't just cause emotional distress, it causes actual developmental damage. We may have accidentally committed acts that violate our own standards for treatment of conquered populations. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The hegemony prided itself on civilized treatment of conquered species, particularly their young. If their standard procedures were actually causing biological harm to human children, then every principle of their expansion protocols was in question. Sir, Communications Officer Youthlex announced, we're receiving a transmission from the human rescue fleet. Admiral Chen is requesting direct communication with hegemony leadership. Routed through here, Supreme Admiral Korthak ordered. Admiral Sarah Chen appeared on the display, but her appearance had transformed yet again. The desperate parent and the coldly calculating military leader were gone, replaced by someone who radiated the quiet authority of absolute moral certainty. Supreme Admiral Korthak, she began, somehow knowing exactly who she was addressing. My name is Admiral Sarah Chen, and I speak for the human species. We need to talk. Behind her, the security feeds showed organized evacuation procedures as human families moved through the station with their children. Medical personnel treated injured rescuers while others coordinated transportation back to the waiting ships. Admiral Chen, you are interfering with legitimate hegemony operations. The juveniles in question were acquired during standard conquest protocols. No, Admiral Chen replied, her voice carrying a finality that made Zethkar's survival instincts twitch. What you did was take children away from their families. What we're doing is bringing them home. She stepped closer to the camera, and her next words carried the weight of absolute truth. Supreme Admiral, I don't think you understand what you've done. You haven't just threatened individual human families. You've activated something in our species that has kept us alive for millions of years. every human in the galaxy now considers the hegemony a threat to their children. The tactical display updated to show the massive fleet movements Dr. Vex Nye had detected. Hundreds of ships were converging from across human space, and now Zethkar could see their true nature. These weren't military vessels or converted civilian ships, they were colony ships, loaded with entire human populations. Admiral Chen, Supreme Admiral Korthak said carefully, "What exactly are you proposing?" "I'm not proposing anything. I'm stating facts. First fact, you will never successfully hold human children against their family's will. What you've seen today proves that. Second fact, every act of aggression against human families will be met with responses that escalate beyond your ability to predict or control." She gestured toward data streams that appeared beside her image, showing the scope of human reaction across hegemony space. Third fact, humans throughout your territory are now organized and coordinated in ways your intelligence services never detected. We've been sharing information, resources, and plans through networks your monitoring systems can't intercept. Dr. Jextor's voice cut into the transmission. "Admiral Chen, our research suggests humans possess communication abilities that operate outside normal technological channels. How is this possible?" Admiral Chen smiled for the first time since the crisis began. "Dr. Jextor, I assume? Your species thinks in terms of individual versus individual, or at most small group dynamics. Humans think in terms of family, community, and species survival. When you threatened our children, you didn't threaten scattered individuals, you threatened the core of what makes us human." The display shifted to show scenes from across hegemony space. Human populations that had been model citizens and workers just days earlier were now operating with military precision to coordinate resources and information. "We've been among you for generations," Admiral Chen continued. "Working in your facilities, maintaining your equipment, managing your communications. You thought we were integrated into your system. In reality, we were studying it." Commander Zethkar felt the blood drain from his face as he realized the implications. Humans throughout hegemony space hadn't been conquered populations undergoing integration, they had been an intelligence network gathering information for decades. "So here's what's going to happen," Admiral Chen said, her voice taking on the tone of someone delivering an ultimatum. "Our children are coming home. All of them. And you're going to help us make sure this never happens again." Supreme Admiral Korthak's expression hardened. "Admiral Chen, you seem to be under the impression that you're in a position to make demands. Your species is technologically inferior and vastly outnumbered." "You're right about the technology," Admiral Chen admitted. "But you're wrong about everything else. Would you like to see what 47 million humans can accomplish when they're all working toward the same goal?" The display shifted to show real-time feeds from across hegemony space. Infrastructure facilities going offline in coordinated shutdowns. Communication networks being systematically disrupted. Supply chains grinding to a halt as human workers simply stopped. "This is just the beginning," Admiral Chen explained calmly. "Humans built a significant portion of your interstellar infrastructure. We maintain your communication systems. We operate your transportation networks. And now we're all working together." Commander Zethkar watched the tactical displays with growing horror as the scope of human influence across hegemony space became clear. They weren't just populations that had been conquered and integrated, they were the backbone of interstellar civilization throughout hegemony territory. "Admiral Chen," Dr. Krell then interjected, "what you're describing sounds like species-wide coordination on a scale that shouldn't be biologically possible. Doctor, you've been studying us as if we're individual creatures that happen to live in groups. But humans aren't individuals who sometimes cooperate, we're a collective species that expresses through individuals. When you threaten our children, you threaten the future of our species. And species survival overrides every other consideration." The security feeds from Processing Station Gamma 7 showed the final groups of children being reunited with their families. 2,000 young humans, from infants to teenagers, were now safe in the arms of parents who had risked everything to reach them. "Sir," Lieutenant Vex Nye reported quietly, "medical readings from the children show complete normalization of all stress indicators. Heart rates, brain activity, biochemical markers, everything has returned to baseline levels. Dr. Thexran's voice added confirmation from the station's medical bay. Commander, these children are displaying recovery rates that exceed our understanding of psychological trauma treatment. Simply being reunited with their families appears to reverse all negative effects of their separation. Admiral Chen nodded as if she could hear the medical reports. Doctor, human children don't just need their families for emotional support. They need them for proper neurological development, immune system function, and basic biological stability. Separating our children from their families isn't just cruel, it's a form of biological warfare. The weight of her words settled over the bridge like a physical presence. The hegemony hadn't just made a tactical error or a diplomatic mistake, they had unknowingly committed an act that humans perceived as an attack on their species' future. So here's my final offer, Admiral Chen said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who held all the tactical advantages. We take our children and leave. All human populations throughout hegemony space will be relocated to territories outside your control. In exchange, the infrastructure we built will continue functioning, and the knowledge we've gained about your operations will remain confidential. Supreme Admiral Korthak was quiet for a long moment. And if we refuse? Admiral Chen's smile carried no warmth whatsoever. Then, you'll learn what happens when you declare war on human families. And, I promise you, Supreme Admiral, that's not a lesson your civilization will survive. The tactical display showed the scope of human capabilities across hegemony space. Communication networks, transportation systems, manufacturing facilities, defense installations, all dependent on human workers who were now operating as a unified force. You have 48 hours to begin coordination for human population relocation, Admiral Chen announced. After that, we'll assume you've chosen the difficult path. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Sir, Lieutenant Vexnai reported, Processing Station Gamma 7 reports that all human families have successfully departed with their children. No casualties among the children, minimal casualties among the rescue teams. Commander Zethkar stared at the tactical displays showing human ships departing the station, their formations perfect, their coordination flawless. In the space of a few days, the hegemony had gone from conquering what they thought was a primitive species to facing the possibility that they had accidentally declared war on a collective intelligence that had been studying them for generations. Sir, Communications Officer Youthlex announced, we're receiving reports from across hegemony space. Human populations are beginning organized departure procedures from all installations and territories. Dr. Jextor's voice crackled through the communication system. Commanders, I need to share my final analysis of human behavior patterns. What we witnessed wasn't just unusual parental protective instincts. This species operates as a distributed collective intelligence that activates under existential threats. They're not just individually smart, they're collectively brilliant. Supreme Admiral Korthak appeared on the main display one final time, his expression that of someone who had just realized the magnitude of a catastrophic error. Commander Zethkar, High Command has reviewed the situation. We're authorizing full cooperation with human relocation requests. Sir? We're not equipped to fight a war against an enemy that's been integrated into our infrastructure for generations. More importantly, we're not prepared to face the moral implications of what our standard conquest protocols have done to their children. Commander Zethkar nodded slowly. Orders, sir? Help them leave. All of them. And, pray to whatever powers watch over civilized species that they keep their word about maintaining our infrastructure during the transition. As the Dominion's pride began coordinating with the massive human exodus, Zethkar found himself reflecting on the lessons learned during the most educational few days of his military career. The hegemony had always assumed that their technological superiority and military might made them the dominant force in the galaxy. They had never considered the possibility that love could be more powerful than weapons, that family bonds could override tactical considerations, or that an entire species could operate as a unified force when their children were threatened. They had learned that humans weren't just another species to be conquered and integrated. They were something far more dangerous, a species that would sacrifice everything to protect their young. And, in taking human children, the hegemony had made the worst strategic error in their 1,000-year history. They had turned 47 million individuals into a single, focused force with one absolute priority: bringing their babies home. 3 months later, as the last human populations departed hegemony space, Dr. Jextor submitted her final report on human psychology. Her conclusion would be studied in military academies and diplomatic schools for centuries to come. Humans represent a unique form of collective intelligence disguised as individual organisms. Their primary biological imperative is protection and advancement of offspring. Any military or political strategy that threatens human children will activate species-wide defensive responses that operate beyond conventional tactical analysis. Recommendation: classify human family units as military targets only under the most extreme circumstances, and never underestimate the capacity of parental love to overcome technological disadvantages. Commander Zethkar kept a copy of that report on his personal desk for the rest of his career. It served as a permanent reminder that in the vast cosmos, there was no force more powerful than parents fighting for their children.